Okay. All right. We are good to go there, team. Harlan's just jumped on as well. So great to see Harlan. Okay, sorry. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. So usual deal, just a quick reminder to feel free to use icons and stuff throughout if you want to show your appreciation or thoughts on the topics. It's good just to get that communication, and feel free to put your hand up if you have questions. So don't be too shy about communicating and asking questions or showing the emojis, because it just makes the webinar a little more relaxed and better conversation, better communication, and then hopefully that translates to a more fun experience for you all. It's a little reminder on that one, but great to see everyone here tonight. We've got about 10 or so people at the moment. I'll let more people in if they jump on. But for tonight's webinar, we're really stoked to have Darren Butler taking the webinar tonight. And the topic is learning from the North Shore and what we can learn from the North Shore from Darren in terms of riding and coaching. So really stoked to have Darren with us tonight. I'll let him introduce himself. He's got a long list of accolades, but otherwise, yeah, I'm just here in the background, but otherwise I'll hand it over to Darren, and hope you all enjoyed tonight's webinar.
That's great. Thank you, Paul. And thank you all for coming out tonight. It's great to see you all, and it's great to have the opportunity to, continue learning and growing together. Learning really is endless, as we say around here. And, we've been doing a lot of it over the years. I've been coaching myself for the last 25 years. Been based here on the North Shore, and of course it's a real wild environment, and got a great background of history. Raced professionally. Some of you might know my free ride career as well. Was one of the first riders in Rampage, so that will give us some great context to today's session as well, and some of the risk involved. And the North Shore has been such a great place to teach and guide. It presents so many challenges, but like we talk about in our teaching and in our coaching is allowing the terrain to really be our teacher and really be our mentor. And I feel like that's a great segue, and the North Shore just really leads us right into that. So I'm here on the North Shore, Coast Salish territories, and it's an iconic destination, and I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to share these teachings and learnings with you all. So we'll have some opportunity for some questions. We'll have some opportunity for some dialogue. And once again, I'm just so grateful to be here. So thank you so much. So mastering the North Shore. I mean, where do we begin? We got a pretty diverse range of topics here. Skinnies, we've got slippery terrain, steep chutes, drops. What our goal is today for the session is just to break this down into some really actionable items. We want to try to identify, the skills that need some nurturing, both on the coaching and riding side. Really get a clear understanding of our strategies that we're going to use to get there, so that we can ultimately achieve our goals. And our goals are often defined by our riders, our guests, but of course, everybody here is a coach, guide in some capacity. So, we do kind of need to steer those goals, and maybe Paul, if you can slip to the next slide, we'll just start to dive right into it. So, you can see a bit of a mind map here, and this is a little bit of a glimpse of the North Shore, right? There's terrain considerations. It's a bit of a brain gym, if you would. It's a real mental challenge. there's an opportunity for a ton of progression. Lots of goals involved. There's tactics, strategies. There's really technical terrain to be able to work with. And obviously development of technical skills from the riding perspective. And there's a ton of risk. And risk is something that we need to manage when we're teaching on the North Shore. And I use that word very carefully because we definitely don't want to eliminate it. Risk is part of why we do what we do. It's part of what excites us about mountain biking. But all of these topics, when we're getting into some of these drops, some of these steep rocks, some of the skinnies and things that we're riding, they do have elements of risk to them. So we need to make sure that we're nurturing that. And there's some great webinars that are also going to support what we're talking about tonight in terms of the mental skills and some of risk management, building confidence, but also even our bike setup. This is a really, really important thing. So, when we look at this mind map, if you would, when we were working on these slides, this was kind of the ideas. It's, the North Shore could be a bit overwhelming. And when we put it all out on the table like this, it can be a bit overwhelming. So, I'd ask you the question of where do we start? How do we break this down when riders want to learn these skills? So we could probably slip ahead to the next slide there, Paul, and just gain an understanding of, where we would start. So what are some things that we have in common with all of these moves on trails? So maybe in the chat you could chime in. What are some of the skills that you're going to see prominently in skinnies and drops and in shoots? See if we can open up the chat here and see if we can follow along here. Just go ahead and type your answer in there, and anything in common between all of these? Do we have we got the chat going in there, Paul?
Yeah, type away, team.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Brenda. Terrain awareness. Yeah, that's great for the speed judgment, how to proceed. That's great. What are some other commonalities you're going to see between skinnies and drops and steep shoots? Range of motion, range of movement. Yeah, that's a great one, Harlan. That's great. Stability and balance, also a great one. Yes, Chris, Brenda. Yeah, thanks so much. So, I think we're starting to get the handle on it. There's a couple of things in play here. What about our speed control? This is a pretty common one as well. They're going to be working with skinnies, with drops, with some of these steep rock faces. Pressure control is also another really good one. So, for us, what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to understand what skills are present, just from a technical perspective, from a coach, what skills our riders have experience at, what they're good at. Have they taken a session before? Sometimes you might have somebody coming to you for a first time and they've got a really lofty goal and they've never actually taken a lesson before. That could be quite a bit of a different journey than somebody who you're working with year after year, session after session, and they've taken all of your programs. They're working with you for months on end. And really, how do we know which one to start with? Any tips on how will we know? See if we get some other answers in the chat. Where do we how do we define our starting point? Some observation, yeah, after the pre-ride, love it. Warm-ups, this is it. So, I often refer to a slingshot when I'm coaching, and these pre-rides, these conversation, these meet and greet, these initial coaching assessments are really, really good. But we can chat, we can email, we can fill out forms, all that we want. But until we get that time to actually ride with that rider and actually get some time to connect, we don't really know where we're going to start. There's some consistency between the skills that are involved. And now we're starting to paint the picture, or at least get an idea of how slow or how fast we can work through some of these different skills. One more question for you. So for those of you who are in the chat, could you share with me just what your level of certification is? Are you a level 1 coach? Are you level 4 coach? Level 2, level 3, level 4? It'll just give me a chance to tailor the discussion. That's great. Awesome. Really, really cool. We got a nice reference here. That's good. Nice. Sweet. So, for some of the level 1 riders and coaches and guides, we're learning how to stay in our lane. We're learning how to stay in those skill sets one at a time, those building blocks. For those of you who are in the level 2, level 3, you already have a good understanding of skill blending, how we can put these skills together to really shine the light on one, to really develop another one. And those of you who are doing your level 3 and level 4, you've got some experience working with some of the themes. And some of the themes help us touch base in various different skills, sometimes at the same time. It's like the master chef just opening the fridge and knowing exactly what to do. So one of the things that I found is, this is a great question, Paul. Which skill will have the biggest impact for the least effort? That's good. And what I found in 25 years of coaching experience, it doesn't matter what the topic is, it doesn't matter what the goal is, it doesn't matter what the level of rider is, we will always spend some time on stability and balance. And sometimes it's a lot of work, and sometimes it's a little bit of work, but we're always spending some time in this area. Maybe it's refining and polishing things, such as foot position. Something as simple as our cleats on our pedals. In our shoes, like that placement can affect where how well we can stand on the bike, how we can use our limbs to support us. And of course, all of these things are going to come into play when you're dealing with this really advanced terrain on the North Shore. So definitely want to spend some time understanding what the riding skills are involved. And then, of course, once we've done that, we can start our pathway, start to do some work in these areas, and depending on which pathway we're going to go down. Are we going to work on our skinnies? Are we going to work on drops? Are we going to work on steep rolls? So let's have a little chat about that as we move into our next slide, Paul. We spent some time looking at the skills, looking at our, all the options we have. We really have so many options. It's still pretty overwhelming. And at this point, now we start to get into some of our coaching structure. So understanding a rider, who we're working with, the age, the experience, the personality type. Now it's on us to come up with something that's going to be engaging, that's going to be purposeful, that's going to be applicable to these riders. So let's look at something like skinnies. We were chatting about skinnies, and it's one of the topics of today's discussion. How do you think that would go if we took riders right onto the mountain and went to the skinniest skinny right away, and we said, okay, we're going to work on skinnies right here? We've produced a lot of risk to ourselves personally. We've brought a lot of risk to our equipment. There's so many different things. So yeah, progression is really, really important. Having some manageable steps. So you may want to work in a more controlled environment to develop some of these skills, the slow speed balance, the slow speed control, spending some time riding taller, spending some time riding smaller, and really making sure that we're not overwhelming the riders. Yeah, that's a good one, Harlan. I love it. Just Brenda, that's a great one as well. Is just working on the 3 C's. Consistency, confidence, and correct technique. But of course, as we're going through this, we need to make sure that things are engaging. And so when we have our students that we're working with, when they're strong riders, when they're seeing that success, we may see a need to challenge them. And I find that these are really good topics for this, is whether we're doing drops, whether we're doing skinnies, whether we're doing rock faces, we really need to make sure that we are having these measured steps, really good progressions, making sure that we've got really good technique, we've got really good coordination, we've got really good patterns and building history of success. And so sometimes that may actually involve taking a rider out of the trail. So the reason I put drills and maneuvers in here is I've found it to be pretty overwhelming when you take some of these riders into the shore. And even when you're working on skinnies that are on, the lower trails and the lower mountain, it's wet, it's rainy, it's rooty, it's green, it's slippery, it's slidey, there's confined spaces. It can be really, really challenging to do it. So for us as coaches, we really need to find ways to, be able to challenge our riders in some other situations, and in some ways even mimic some scenarios, mimic some challenges. So schoolyards, parking lots, playgrounds are a great way to develop some of that slow speed balance and control for skinnies, just riding on the lines, track stand challenges, survivor games. For us as coaches, just having a real understanding of the technical riding skills that are involved in each of these things is really going to help us have that slingshot approach. And once again, just to reinforce that means taking more time to do that assessment, more time to do that warm up, and even more time to build in those patterns, build that muscle memory, build in that repetition, so that we can make sure that our riders are successful. And then what about the coach's challenge? How does this come into play? If we are only challenging their technique, only challenging their speed, so some of these drills and scenarios, are we actually preparing them for the task at hand? You can see the pictures in the background on these slides, some pretty steep rock faces with the skinny approaching it, and we've got a consecutive stepping rock face as well. And so you can do all the work in a controlled environment, or a schoolyard, or a skills park, but until you're actually out in that technical and slimy and intimidating environment, we're not really going to be prepared. So for us as coaches, we need to find a way to choose good terrain to start to bring in some risk and really bring in some some challenge. And how are we going to do that? So for us, it might mean I think I saw Brenda in the chat just bringing up terrain awareness. This is a really important thing that's often overlooked. When we look at these skills, we often think about the positioning, we often think about the braking, we think about the pressure control and that terrain awareness. And sometimes it's just, the lines. Well, the lines are pretty important. And here on the North Shore, the lines aren't that smooth and they're not that obvious. So we need to spend some time really varying our lines and trying out some different lines. So I'll just pause right there. How can we start to challenge our riders a little bit to prepare for some of the surprises that they might encounter when riding some of these steep chutes or drops or skinnies on the North Shore? Any ideas from the coaches in the webinar here? How can we increase some challenge and provide an engaging environment for students to prepare them? Some timing coordination work. Yeah, love it. Excellent thing to be able to do. Any other ideas? How do we get good at riding different lines? Combining a couple of skills. Yeah, that's a good one, Harlan. Skill blending. Yeah, also a good one. So to ride different lines, we kind of have to ride some different lines. And for us to be successful when things get challenging, yeah, choosing harder lines on easier features is great. Slow speed skills and safe environment. Yeah, I mean, these are really good things for developing that slow speed control. But what are we going to do when the speed gets away from us? You know, one of the things that I've found teaching and guiding here on the North Shore is often riders have the eye on the prize, right? They're so focused on the rock face. They want to be able to do the drop. They want to be able to do the skinny, but they can't get to it. You know, they can't get into it and they can't get out of it. Or maybe they ride the feature for the first time and, you know, things get a little bit loose afterwards. And then what? You know, and so for us, I think it's really important to start to bring in some risk, start to bring in some challenge, and really challenge our riders to mix it up. You know, ride on some different terrain, ride over various different routes, ride over various different rocks, you know, providing a suitable challenge. And for us, how do we know what a suitable challenge is? You know, I think we've got some great, I'm just keeping an eye on the chat here. We've got some great ideas in there, building it up with safe progressions, smaller, safer versions of it. Yeah, this is great, but ultimately we do need to be able to mix and match and variate some of our lines. So on the North Shore, we have a couple of expressions which I'll share with you. It's a rainforest, you know, it's the North Shore. And if you don't ride in the rain, well, you're going to miss out on a lot of riding. So we kind of need to ride in the rain. But a couple of cool things about the rain here that is interesting is sometimes when things are really wet, they're clean. And so, you know, you really learn to really read your environment, and these are other bits of information that you can pull into the equation. So that rock face that you're seeing right there on the slide, the steep rock face, after a fresh rainstorm, that rock face is really, really clean, and you'll get a remarkable amount of traction on it in the morning. But later in the afternoon, once you've had 20, 40, maybe it's a busy day, maybe you got 100 riders coming on it, it will actually have little bits of dirt, little bit of mud, and the rock face will actually get quite slippery. So for us, we need to spend some time riding in some of these various different conditions, whether it's clean, whether it's dirty, and starting to be able to read those as riders and really help our riders be able to read those moments and read those finer details beyond, you know, just the lines themselves. Another expression I'll share with you from riding on the North Shore is if it's glowing green, it's probably slippery. And if it's not, well, it should be good. So this is a simple expression, and but it's so true. When you start to look at some of these rocks, look at some of these lines, and it will really open up some of the options that are available to you. And a lot of this applies elsewhere. You know, all of our rocks are different, all of our roots are different, our dirt is different, but even just that presence of greenery is you know, a big factor into whether we're going to be successful. And so where am I going with this is we do want to have an identification of what type of rider that we're working with and what they need. Do they need some nurturing? Do they need some challenging? Do they need something you know, that's going to vary it a little bit? And for us as coaches, we're going to have to bring, you know, some of this challenge in. We're going to have to provide a little bit of challenging terrain along the way. But for us to be able to manage the risk, we've got to do that in the right way. Does that make sense? Is there any questions? I know I've been sharing a lot about the coaching strategies here and riding on the North Shore. Maybe just pause for a moment and see if there's any questions along the way. Some thumbs up, love it. Oh yeah, lots of thumbs up there. It's good. Sweet. Paul, is there anything that that you wanted to add here? Any questions that you wanted to touch on in terms of coaching skills and strategies that we might use at this point?
Yeah, I think no, it's sounding great so far. As you were talking, one thing that sort of popped in my head was like, as a coach, we often think about, how do I teach them? What strategies do I come up with? Do we come up with some drills? Do we come up with some terrain? One of the biggest tools that you have as a coach is yourself as a rider. So if you want to build your skill set for coaching, you need to build your skill set for riding. As soon as you have been through that progression, you've worked up to riding that drop, or you've worked up to riding that chute, and you've gone from kind of being scared, and then you did it once and it was sketchy, and now you've done it 20 times and it's super smooth. You going through those progressions is one of the best tools to develop your coaching. And when it comes to the North Shore, and in a way, the North Shore is just kind of, for anyone that doesn't live on the North Shore, the North Shore in a way can just be translated as anything technical. It's like the mecca for technical mountain bike, and it's incredible. But if you don't live on the North Shore, then just sort of swap that phrase for technical riding. But yeah, you going through that, you developing your own riding, you're going to learn so much through that process. And that's where there really is such a strong link between your riding skills, your technical understanding, and your coaching skills. And sometimes I feel like coaches are a bit unbalanced. Maybe they're too high on the riding skills and they haven't thought enough about the coaching. But just as easily we see coaches that are really trying to sort of problem solve the coaching, and they haven't actually spent time working on their riding. And really a good coach is trying to raise the picture on both sides there. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of pull a link between how much your own riding experiences will translate into all of this decision making, maneuvers, skills, drills, take it easy, progress them, terrain choice. It all is going to come from a place of experience rather than a place from theory. And I always feel like anytime I'm coaching in the North Shore, coaching technical terrain, anything with kind of higher level risk, it's so much easier if I've been there and done that myself as a coach.
And this is a great thing to add, Paul. I really appreciate you adding this to the discussion, and you can probably slide into the next slide there as well, because I think you've touched on some great things, and this is what I've referenced, is the North Shore can really be a great teacher in itself. And it continues to teach me after riding here and coaching here for 25 years. There's still things out there that are hard and they're scary, and we get hit up to ride them. I'm actually working with a rider right now who's got a pretty lofty terrain based goal, and they want to ride a line that's downright scary. And it's an iconic line on the North Shore. And, for us as coaches, it's good for us to go through that process of understanding what it might be like to be able to ride that, and to be able to break it down and think about some of the risks involved and some of the coaching strategies that we might use to do that. And I do think that that's a really important point that you brought up, Paul, is we can think about the various different coaching strategies, but sometimes even just going through actually trying to ride these features and working on our own riding will often lead us to the answers, right? And we can often teach ourselves, through riding some of this technical terrain, which is really good. Yeah,
sometimes I think of it, I often say, like, we each have our own little rampage. Like, my rampage might be a lot harder or easier than someone else's rampage, but in our mind, as a coach, we're always looking to push our riding by defining, what is rampage terrain for us, so that we're still safe,
Yeah.
we don't need coaches going out there and killing themselves. But within your own comfort level, what's my little rampage? What can I build up to this month or this season, and safely keep progressing my boundaries? And then, through that process, you're doing everything. You're learning so much about terrain choice and about progressions and about mental skills and fear and technical skills and bike setup. Like you're forcing yourself to go through the same process.
Yeah. That's great. And I see we got a great question from Harlan here on the chat, which I'll just touch on before we get into the, some of the risk and the guiding side is, how we handle a moment when a rider shuts down. This happens for all of us. And I feel like there's a couple things. There's the empathetic human side, just understanding that this can happen. Sometimes we're just not on our day, and it's just, reading the leaves, reading the river, understanding the moment. Maybe it's just, not the day for it. But at the same time, sometimes it could be a glimpse into our process. And this is something that I think we see a lot of these days, is that sometimes the rider's not ready for that moment, right? Sometimes the coach isn't ready for that moment. And it might have just revealed itself at that point in time. So there's some ways that we can build that rider's ability to have better self-awareness. And this is through those patterns, the 3 C's that we've referenced, building a history of success. This is how we build confidence. How do we build confidence? By being unconfident and then working through it. Right? Having lots of variations, having lots of repetition, having lots of mileage, doing things slow, doing things fast, doing things repeatedly. That helps us build like patterns of success. Have I ever tried to do this hungry? Have I ever tried to do this late at night? Have I ever tried to do this without a warm-up? And all of those little things help prepare us for the moment. So sometimes when a rider shuts down, it's an opportunity for us to just see a little bit more of the picture, and maybe it is a good thing. So because it might reveal some steps along the way that have perhaps been skipped. But I love that question, Harlan. It's great. And really that brings us into the third kind of part of this is the guiding and the risk management. We do need to have some risk in our riding. So we touched on this a little bit before with our coaching, making sure that riders are really prepared, and making sure that they're in that moment at the right time, and making sure that we can build confidence. And this goes back to these patterns, this repetition, just making sure that we're taking all the right steps, not being afraid of a paradoxical progression. Like, don't be afraid to back it up a little bit, and build some repetition, build some mileage, get some muscle memory in there. But also don't be afraid to try some things in some challenging environments. We have to go ride in the rain, or we're never going to get good at riding in the rain. We're always going to be scared of riding in the rain. Sometimes we do need to ride through some things when we're a little bit challenged, when we're a little bit scared, so that we can be prepared for these moments when they arise. Back to some of the challenges I was referring to when we're coaching is on the North Shore. One of the things that I've seen, and this isn't necessarily in my personal coaching sessions, but I see it all the time, and I've seen it over the years, is riders crash and often, have injuries as a result. It's not from the feature itself, it's from what happens after the feature, right? And this is where some of those challenges really come into play. So making sure that we've got some good repetition of riding over some lines that are less than ideal, riding over some roots and some rocks that are less than ideal. Try riding your bike with too much air in your tires. Just pump them up and go for a ride, and try to ride some technical terrain. As much as it will be challenging for you, it will actually be really good for your skill development, and it will actually help you build some confidence. So once again, just bringing it back to some of these coaching skills and strategies in managing risk, is we do really want to bring some risk in, because it's going to help build focus, because it's going to help build variation, and it's going to help us prepare for these moments. But having said that, we also need to be really smart. On the North Shore, one of the things that we need to be really conscious of is we're right here. We're right beside the city. But yet it can be hours until we can get to emergency care. And so some of these features that these riders want to ride, we need to be absolutely certain that they're ready for it. You need to really take the time to ensure that you've got those good technical focus, you've done your coaching homework, and you really identify all of the risks that are involved. And there's a lot of these spots on the mountain where there's no cell signal. We have spots on the mountain where there's no radio coverage. You know, we just held a downhill race on the North Shore for the first time in 25 years, and we were reminded why when we didn't have radio contact on the course and we didn't have cell phone contact off the course. And it was this triangulation between, you know, smoke signals, drivers, volunteers, you know, talking up the mountain and just being able to communicate with each other. So for us, it's really making sure that we understand the risks, the rewards, really understanding why people want to do it, and helping to give ourselves the opportunity to be successful. So couple great things. Definitely want to refer you to the mental webinar, mental skills, mental workshop. There's a lot of mental stuff that comes into play here. It can be really easy to get distracted on the North Shore. What about this? What about that? You know, and there's a lot of things that are going to come in play. Your bike setup, really, really important, right? So not only these technical skills, coaching skills, and a risk management, but also having a really, really good understanding of your bike setup. These are all really important factors, and they play a huge role. Sometimes it's a PSI or two, and sometimes it's a click or two here and there on the fork, on the shock. Could be handlebar rise, could be lever position, and these things can have a monumental or catastrophic effect on our coaching and teaching when we're out there. Any questions so far? As we are, just a little pause here. How can we prepare our riders to manage some risk?
Without just pushing them down.
Yeah, exactly. How do we do that?
Give it some.
Yeah, well, that's just it. We actually have to bring some risk into it. You know, we have to be able to make some decisions along the way. And you know, I like this reference from one of the other webinars. Paul, is turning fear into focus. You know, having that fear can actually be a really good thing because it does force us to focus. We do have to clarify that pathway. What do I need to be successful here? You'll see some other riders talking things through, like, okay, I'm going to approach slow. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to 3, 2, 1, go. And just having those little word tracks can help us. And that's a good example of riders managing fear in really risky situations. So these word tracks that we've come up with along the way are not only good teaching tools to keep it simple, but they're also really good risk management tools and also really good focus tools.
I like the way you say that. Like, it kind of reminded me, like, that question's really good, I think. Like, how can we prepare riders to manage risk? And I think a lot of the time with coaching, we have a perception of what's happening in our head as the coach. And then the rider's obviously going through a similar process, either consciously or subconsciously. And one of the risks we have when we're coaching anything risky, like drops or skinnies or slippery chutes, is the disconnect between what the coach thinks is happening and what the rider thinks is happening, right? And so one way to make sure that, you know, how do I get people ready to manage risk, is I want to make sure we're both on the same page. So the way I try to do that is try and use a scale of numbers to try and quantify things. So if it's a question about technically prepared, how technically prepared are you? Give me a 5-star rating. I'm 5 stars, I'm 4 stars, I'm 3 stars. Like, do you feel like you have enough skills? And then I might say the same question again, but like, tell me how your bike feels. Is this helping you be successful right now? Give me a 5-star rating. And 5-star rating is quite good because they're quite used to it from Google and stuff. Or you can do a 10-point scale. It doesn't really matter.
Yep.
But I just try and quantify it. And like, how are you feeling emotionally? Like fear, confident, relaxed, nervous? You know, are you 100% ready to go? Are you 5 stars? Or are you like kind of scared and not sure what you're going to do? Are you a 2-star? Like, as soon as I start trying to quantify things, that does 2 things. It helps me assess the situation more accurately as a coach, but it starts prepping the student to manage risk with A, more intelligent questions, and B, more accurate self-assessment, because they think we're just asking them questions, and we are, but actually what we're doing is we're training them to A, think of what questions they should be asking themselves, and then B, we're training them to sort of self-assess a little more accurately, a little bit more objectively, and trying to put emotions and feelings and thoughts into a bit more of a quantifiable scale. Because then when they're back there and they're back above that drop, and last time they were here and they didn't do the drop and they felt like they were kind of a 2 out of 5, but today, you know what, I really feel like I'm a 4 or a 5 out of 5. That decision making, that quantification has helped them manage the risk much more better, even if the coach is with them or not.
I think that's great, Paul. I love the 5-star system. I love Mike's reference to the thumb gauge. You know, it's a good one. Where you at? And of course, something easy to understand and comprehend for a lot of people is just the traffic lights. You know, when we reference this in a lot of our coaching is, you know, what color's your light? You green light, your yellow light, your red light. And understanding your rider and taking that time to connect with them as a you know, genuinely as a human, and understanding their personality and the learning environment that they succeed or are challenged in more, and just understanding what it takes to turn a yellow light green or turn a yellow light red, and maybe you want to influence that one way or another. But I think these are great things to be able to talk about with your student, talk about with yourselves as coaches, and even just this discussion with yourself, because I think this is great self-awareness, and this is really important, because at the end of the day, the stakes are really high. You know, when you're dealing with skinnies, when you're dealing with steep rock faces, like you can see in the image, when you're dealing with drops, you're in these really technical environments, the stakes are really high. So it is really important that we have that open communication, we have that self-awareness as a coach and also as a rider, so that we can make some really, really good decisions, and making sure that we're putting in the work along the way, right? Why don't you flip it over to the last slide there, Paul? We've got a nice little summary of things. So, you know, really at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that we understand what skills are involved from a riding perspective, you know, biomechanical perspective. What are the riding skills that need the nurturing and need the building? Maybe they just need some refinement and some polish. But it just comes back to our simple coaching methodologies: is which skills are present, which skills are prominent, and which skills are going to be the most beneficial to be able to work on and to address, which ones are suitable for this time frame. You know, maybe you've got a 2-hour session, maybe you've got 4 2-hour sessions, maybe you just have a 1-day session. So these are going to be big factors in all these decisions. You know, and you've got the need and the requirement to find some variations, to mix it up. You know, if you're teaching the same thing the same way all the time, it's going to get boring for your student, and it's going to get boring for you as a coach. So finding ways to mix and match, trying some things out within reason, building some challenge, building some variation is going to be really good for your riders, preparing them for the real world. These are really the skills that it takes to teach on the North Shore. and to help your riders develop the skills to do these moves, such as skinnies, steep, slippery rocks and drops. And of course, the strategies, that are involved for our own teaching. Are we going to do a whole bunch of drills? Are we going to do a whole bunch of maneuvers? Are we going to go right into the trails or not? Sometimes we've spent more time in a controlled environment because it helps us build that repetition. It helps us build really good analysis. But the downside to that is it doesn't put us in a real environment. So maybe you have access to a controlled environment, maybe you don't. And in an ideal scenario, you're going to have some time to use both. But finding some suitable spaces where you can get those repetitions, you can get that mileage, you can get that, that measurable progression. These logical progressions are going to be really, really good, but you have to make sure that your session's engaging. And doing drills over and over and over can be repetitive, it can be tiring, and that can bring in some fatigue. So making sure that you've got some engaging things to mix in, and of course you're going to fall back to the skills present. And there's probably some ways to keep this engaging along the way. Paul, is there something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, if it's cool with you, man.
Yeah, go for it.
You kind of reminded me of something that I thought might be quite cool to share. But there's another instructor organization out there, and they're really big on teaching in open areas, right? Yeah. And there's always pros and cons to it. But I know part of the logic behind that is there have been a few studies that show that riders who perceive, and not just riders, like athletes, sports people who perceive they're in an environment of low risk, they do learn quicker. What that study doesn't extrapolate to is perceived risk is relative to each person. So essentially the takeaway is what we don't want to do is just blanket everybody with the same idea that you will learn better in a car park. Beginners will learn better in a car park because for them that is an area where they perceive low risk. But if you take a strong intermediate rider and you take them onto the trails, it's quite common that they perceive the green and blue trails, even some of the light black trails, as an area of low risk. So in that sense, I can take them into the trails and mentally and biomechanically still develop their skills just as quickly as if I was in a car park area. And even on the flip side, especially when you are, what you've been doing, Darren, like something Darren is fantastic at is because he's such an incredible rider. His natural instinct for trail progressions and guiding on the trails is some of the best I've ever seen. And he's a really good example of this. Like, he's such a strong rider that he can ride a double black tech trail and essentially be in an environment where there's very little to no risk for him individually. So just as a coach, always being aware of, yes, we want an easy environment so they feel safe and they try different techniques or different timing or a different bike setup, whatever it might be. But for a stronger rider, that could still easily be in a trail environment. And if we spend too much time in the open area, what I've seen happen, and I've seen it in bike parks too, when people are learning to jump, is they spend too much time on the small features that when you finally get to a big feature, technically they might be like super ready for it. You've done all this homework on a small jump and they're absolutely nailing it, and you finally get them to a bigger jump. But they're so scared of that new environment now that technically they're ready, but mentally they're completely not ready. So teaching on the North Shore is something you really have to go through, and teaching in technical terrain is you have to build up the skills gradually, but you have to build up the mind gradually. And that's why I love Darren's point. He said it a few times tonight, like, you've got to gradually introduce the risk, because it's actually really important to build focus, but kind of mentally prepare them for what they're going to do. And jumping out of a car park suddenly into a steep chute is, even for me, I struggle with that. If I haven't ridden for a while and you suddenly take me up Pemberton and I have to ride a trail behind my house, and Ross is like, why are you walking around it? I'm like, I'm just not, and it's something I've done a billion times before, but I'm just not feeling it that day. So yeah, building up that terrain gradually is key. So I just
Yeah,
wanted
that's
to
a
tie
great.
that in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Paul. And I love that you've been able to pick that up, because it is really important that we do bring some of these challenges in. We do bring some of this risk in, because it's not, the point is it's not just a rock face. You know, that rock face is green on the side, and it's kind of off camber, and it leads into some pretty chunky steps, and it's raining, and there's no cell coverage. So there's nobody coming to get you. So, you know, this is really what we're getting at here on the North Shore, is that, you know, it can be really overwhelming, but it really, in summary, it just reminds us to do our homework and do all the homework and don't skip any steps. You know, make sure that you really spend some time understanding and addressing the technical skills. Make sure you use some really good coaching strategies of not just, you know, pumping tires and making people feel good in open areas, but also really providing some engaging teaching moments and some opportunity to really challenge each other on the trail and go have some fun and ride some silly lines and ride with funky bike setups, to really expand your ability, you know, as a rider, to prepare for the moment. Because if you do those things, you're going to be so much more prepared. And that's what helps you succeed. You know, I bet you everyone here has been to a concert before. And, you know, what happens when the performer breaks a string on their guitar? What happens when the mic doesn't work? What happens when things go sideways? A lot of times you don't even notice. And you know why? It's because they put in the preparation. They've actually practiced for those scenarios. They've actually taken the time to prepare for that moment. And I think this is really important for us to keep in mind here is if we do the homework and if we put in that work, we really will be prepared for the moment. And if you find yourself in that situation where people are shutting down or you're uncertain yourself, that's probably some insight as to skipping a step or somebody's not prepared for that moment. And really, these are so important when you're teaching in an environment like the North Shore, where the stakes are so high and the risk is so high. This is really your recipe for success. So you got some skills, you got some strategies, and this is going to help you achieve your goals along the way. And hopefully this has been really helpful for you. So I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions. I know we're coming up on time. We've got about 5 minutes left or so. Anything we haven't touched on, or any specific scenarios somebody would like some insight on? Has it been helpful? Maybe you could just add some emojis if you're liking what we're adding to the mix here. Sweet. Got some love in the emojis. No other questions. Surely there must be some questions along the way. Boom. All right. No questions. Well,
What's your top tip for riding skinnies?
Top tip for riding skinnies. Well, let's just do a quick breakdown here. Love it. Couple of things. The two most important skills, along with the strategy, right? We'll start with the strategy. I mean, you got to get on the skinny and then you got to get off the skinny, right? What are the technical skills that we're going to use to do that? Is obviously positioning and good braking control, right? So are we going to be taller or smaller? How long is the skinny? It's probably, let's say it's really long. So let's be a little bit taller so we can use our bones to support us. We will likely be a little bit further forward to make sure that we've got really good traction over the front wheel, because if we have to adjust a wheel, it's probably our back one. And that's going to give you really good side-to-side movement. But gearing and cadence is also important, so you can do a good ratchet. Shoots. Lean back.
Do you track the brake when you pedal on skinnies?
Yeah, really good question. I actually drag both of my brakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dragging the back brake can be good. But I do find that some of the variations that we get on skinnies on the North Shore, just in terms of elevation, I do like to drag my front brake. because I just find it has such, it does such a good job of reducing my speed and keeping my speed in check. I'll actually drag both of my brakes, and some of you might have noticed over the years, I will chew bubble gum because I find it helps calm my nerves, keep you focused. You know, for those of you who've been around for, sometimes I used to do like some stunt shows, and it was something I discovered along the way, that just chewing some gum just help, you know, calm some things. We got a couple good questions here. Here, the approach for shoots. You know, this is a good example of doing your homework. You know, the old lean back, close one eye, only use one front brake, or only use one brake. Yeah, we're gonna chuck that one out, and really making sure you're doing the homework. And this is kind of what I was thinking about, was doing these shoots as an example. You know, really making sure that you've got really good positioning, making sure that you've got really good brake control from both of your brakes. Another secret to the North Shore is you got to keep your wheels rolling. They don't have to be rolling fast, but you got to keep them rolling. Keeps your traction up, keeps the suspension working. So when you're riding these shoots, you got to make sure both wheels are rolling. You'll still see some old school riders locking up the rear wheel and they're sliding around. Both wheels roll in, really good positioning. Do your homework. Practice riding some rowdy lines, because it's going to get rowdy, and that's going to help you if things don't go awry. And the last tip that I'll give you for riding shoots is, don't be afraid to get out of the rut. The rut is for suckers. We all get sucked right into the rut, and it's actually kind of lousy down in there. Do a little dance, work the sides. It's a little bit of magic for you.
I think one thing I like with that is like the terrain side of it, like because one of the things I think I've learned from the North Shore is, like, there's often a big gap between, like, I can do this drop and then the next drop is up here, because it's not always a manicured bike park and it's the same for shoots. But if you actually do your homework and you go explore and you go ride different terrain, you can hit the smaller drop quicker and land it deeper. Or there's a big shoot you want to do and it's twice the size of anything else, but there's a trail near it that's not as steep, but you could just practice riding that faster. And you can actually, with some creativity, you can build up those missing building blocks in terms of terrain more than you think, whether it's you as a rider or you as a coach. And that would be my thing with shoots, is people don't spend enough time, like, can I just ride a slightly smaller one, or can I try and ride a slightly less steep one but quicker? Like, try and do that homework with more terrain, so that when you do get to the shoot, it's not such a big jump from the last thing that you did.
It's a great thing, Paul, you know, and it really ties into these progressions, is, you know, to ride the big shoot, start with the little shoot, and then work to a medium shoot, and then do a medium big shoot, right? And then having those variations, right, of trying the different speeds, trying different brakes, trying different approaches. So yeah, there's lots of good strategies here. And I love your question as well, Harlan, about key decision making, you know, for that moment, right? And a lot of it is kind of still working through some of this stuff, but you know, just building some confidence in a rider and putting them in really challenging situations in simulating. So finding other parts of the mountain to simulate similar experiences, so that when they get to that moment, they feel like they've been there before, right? So trying to make sure that they've got an experience to draw from on the approach, they've got an experience to draw from on the run out, they've got some experience handling the physical nature of the compression that they're going to feel at the bottom, right? And so then when they're putting these pieces together, it's not 3 or 4 foreign things. They're experiences that you know, we put them through to be able to draw from, to be able to reference, and help them prepare for that moment. So hopefully that answers your question about key decision making. But lots of seeds in the garden, as you would, and just lots of nurturing along the way, and helps the rider get through the moment. Good preparation. Does that answer your question, Harlan? Yeah, thumbs up.
Well, I was. It's fun to have a lesson, and you come out of it, and you realize this, or in the middle of the lesson, there was this moment, and I just thought you might have one off the top of your head, like a literal example of like, yeah, I was out with this rider the other day. This was like this thing that they wanted. We were sitting there looking at it, and I suddenly was like, you know what? Let's go over here and do this run out so that we could kind of like, it's got a similar speed, a similar like braking zone at the bottom. And then we'll come back to the shoot and we'll see if you're ready for it here. So I just didn't know if you thought it'd be fun.
Yeah, and I think those are great things. And the only thing I would possibly recommend to that, just be mindful is some of the language, that we'll use. And it's just to help them prepare for it, right? I try to avoid using to see if we're ready. I try to avoid, moments where we're going to do a bit of an assessment. We're just going to warm up. We're going to do some exercises to help you prepare for it, help you be successful. And then, as Paul was referring to earlier, there's a bit of self-awareness involved. And so it's less of us as a coach gatekeeping and it's more of their involvement in making these decisions. So when they say they're ready, there's like, I've got a green light. I'm ready. Let's go do this. Yeah. I feel like I'm prepared now. Like I want to hear it from them. I don't want to have to ask them.
I think that's bang on, Darren. Like, I think there's a bit of a misperception when it comes to coaching on whether it's the North Shore and drops and stuff, or whether it's biking jumps in a bike park or something. It's like the coach needs to get the student ready. And then it's the coach's decision to say yay or nay. Like ultimately you're trying to really, in an ideal coaching scenario, you're trying to train the rider to make the decision themselves. And you're really there as a guide to sort of put down the barriers either side and keep the rider on the right path. And obviously you're there as a safety net. If they do make the wrong decision, you can obviously jump in and kibosh that. But ultimately, in terms of like what's the key decision making moment in a lesson that we gave as a coach, I'll give you one example. I was with my daughter actually the other day. We're at the top of this Bob Gnarly trail, and there's a steep kind of chute that you have to go slowly, and then there's this drop into a left-hand berm. It's like a double black or a single black, and you can roll it if you control your braking into it. And if you don't control your braking, you have to kind of jump the drop, but then you land with a lot of speed before the berm, and the berm's not very good. So she was totally ready for it. And I just said, you know what to do. You've been here before. We've walked around it a bunch of times. Daddy's going to go down and ride it and just roll through it slowly. It's a bit greasy today. I'll see you at the bottom after the drop. So I'm purposefully setting it up for her to make the call and her to make the decision, knowing that, what Darren said, we've done all the homework until this point. This was like the 4th or 5th time we'd been up there. And she's done stuff way harder than this drop. So that's ultimately the ideal you want to get to, where you can get to a point in collaboration where you trust the student enough that they can be autonomous in their decision making. She wrote down, she didn't quite feel like she had it. She stopped, she walked around it, and then her brother did the same. So that was a decision I gave that day to be like, I'm not going to tell her what to do today. She is ready mentally and technically to do it, which also means to me, she's ready to make the decision herself. If she's not scared and she's not fearful, she'll be calm and she'll make rational decisions. And if she does happen to do it, one analogy I want to leave you all with is the rubber band. Everybody is a rubber band, and you can stretch it so much. And ideally, what you want to do before your student gets into a situation is you want the rubber band to be nice and stretchy, so that if something happens they don't expect, or they get a little bit in over the head, we can stretch their skill set, we can stretch their mental space, even their equipment set up. Like, ooh, the fork was a little bit soft for that drop, but you managed fine. You want them to be a nice stretchy rubber band. So I felt that day, if she didn't control her braking, if she went over the drop a bit fast, if she got a bit loose on the exit, she has enough room in the tank and enough stretch in her rubber band to cope with it. And so when I get to that point technically and mentally with my students, I feel like this is a good time for them to start making those decisions. So yeah, don't know if that helps, but sometimes the decision is not necessarily for us to give the green light. The decision is to hand over the decision making to them. That also takes a long time to do, but that's the goal that we're aiming for.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to, we're trying to help our riders make decisions for themselves. I mean, they're signing up for coaching. They're signing up for some rider improvement, some insight, some awareness. And what they're not signing up for is to have a riding buddy for the rest of their life, right? We're not going to be there with them all the way, right? So I think this is great. I think it's really important. And I think it was a great little bit. I like the analogy of the rubber band. And yeah, it is important for us to do the homework and help these riders make good decisions. And it's really important that we build in some variation, build in some risk, and we just steer, and guide that learning. And if we do all of the steps and we identify and develop and nurture and connect with our students along the way, we will be successful. And you both know it. You both know when you're ready. You'll both be confident. You'll feel good about it. They'll feel good about it. You're going to get green lights. And the last thing I'll leave you with is don't forget the bike setup. It's so important. When you're doing the spicy stuff, when you're doing the risky stuff, when you're riding on the North Shore, the bike setup is so important. So take the time to really make sure that their bike's performing well. And this is one of the things that I'll do in that assessment. And as they're riding things, I'm really zooming in. I want to see how that fork's working. I want to see how the brakes are working. I want to see what type of tires they're using, how well they're inflated. Do they have inserts? Like what the compound is? Like all of these things really come into play. So don't be afraid to spend a little extra time doing the bike setup as the risk increases and as the demand for performance increases. But I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for coming out. I know we're a little bit over time. If there are any further questions, I'm happy to take a couple on, but at some point, we do have to bring things to a close. But I feel like there's been some great discussions, some great questions along the way. And just want to thank you for hosting today, Paul, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Darren. We'll hang out for a couple of minutes, but otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the webinar tonight, everyone. Really good to see you all, and we'll see you next month for a few more. And yeah, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you, guys. This is awesome.
Well, no worries, Chris. Good to have you.
Nice to see you, Darren.
Yeah, nice to see you, Harlan. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, man. All right, I'm out. We'll catch you later.
Yeah, cheers.